Hi, everybody. Nobody showed up today, but that's okay. This is optional. I just wanted to at least quickly demonstrate some of what I was hoping to do with those who would show up today, and so that if you just weren't able to come and you were hoping to get some more help on Essay 2, you would get that. So I'm going to go ahead and move us through to talk about, just remind you that the weekly PowerPoint challenge is to do your book club crew reading and complete your section of the book club crew log by Saturday at 11:59 p.m. and get an extra credit point for doing that. So I wanted to also go over the Essay 2 essential questions one more time. So it's always important before you do a pre-write, before you do your rough draft, and before you revise for your final draft, to go back and reread the essay guidelines. It's so important to do that because there's a lot of components in there. You want to make sure that you keep reminding yourself. Now, there's more than just the essential questions. You want to look at the length. It's 1,200 words. You want to look at what kinds of sources you're supposed to be using. So there are other requirements that you want to read, and they're available in the prompt that you can download or just look at online. But the essential questions are and the overall topic is, develop a hypothesis about why, for whom, and how Duckworth is arguing in Grit. And of the three, the how is going to be the majority, the bulk of the essay. You're going to be using relevant concepts of argument from class lecture. So I had those videos that I made, which you can cite, by the way. You can cite the videos. And then also the handout Logos, Pathos, Ethos, and Kairos, which is linked. And then I also had it under resources for Essay 2. So you have these, so you have two sources of information on rhetorical appeals, on purpose and audience. The videos from week 6, the beginning of level 2, right? So week 6, I had a series of videos on those. So if you haven't seen them, they would be pretty important to watch or rewatch and review again. And then the handout is another source that kind of gives you a different spin on it, maybe a different explanation that might help clarify it even more for you. And so you're going to explain the ways that Duckworth appeals to her audience. And that's where we're bringing in Logos, Ethos, Pathos, and Kairos, and as well as who you think her audience is. And I should clarify why you think what she's trying to accomplish for her audience. So instead of just cataloging, it's not just going to be a list of rhetorical appeals, but you also want to be making an argument yourself about how and why they work, or how and why you don't think they might not work. You can critique her for her apparent purpose and audience. So maybe you think there's something she could do better, and that's all right to say too. The essential questions then kind of sum this up. Why, for whom, and how is Duckworth arguing in Grit? What rhetorical strategies does she use to succeed in her purpose with her audience? And so on Wednesday, I talked with the class a little bit about how you might, in your introduction, you're going to want to have that hook, bridge, thesis, where you're kind of, that's your hypothesis, right? Thesis is part of the word hypothesis, right? Where you're going to say, hey, I think she uses these rhetorical appeals well or not well for this audience and purpose, something like that. And you might say, well, she uses logos effectively and ethos effectively, maybe pathos is not as strong, maybe kairos is not as strong, or vice versa. So whatever you think are her strengths and weaknesses in her book, you can express that in your thesis statement. Okay, so as you're thinking about your thesis and topic sentences, they should all really directly tie into those essential questions. Okay, what you might do after the introduction is have a summary paragraph where you summarize what she's arguing, right? So what is Duckworth arguing in the chapters that we've read? What is she telling us about the nature of Grit, about how Grit is grown, how we increase our Grit, what makes us more gritty or less gritty according to the chapters that we've read, okay? So you might have a paragraph where you're summarizing her ideas and giving her credit for them, but using it in your own words, explaining it briefly. Then you might have another paragraph where you're talking about purpose and audience. Who is she writing for? Why is she writing to them? A lot of people on Wednesday said they felt like it was for young people, people who were maybe in high school or college, people just kind of launching into their life, trying to figure out who they are and what they want to do. And so you would want to make an argument for that, and you would want to give some evidence from the text or from maybe an interview they read or something else that kind of gives you the sense that, oh, this is her audience. And then you want to talk about what does she want to achieve with that audience? What is her purpose? Is she trying to inform them, entertain them, persuade them? I'm trying to remember who, I think it might have been Brisa, I'm not sure, but somebody said the word advise, and I love that because advising is a mix of informing and persuading, right? If we give advice to somebody, we want them to be informed, but we also want them to take our advice and actually act on it, right? And so persuasion is wanting to get somebody to act differently, to do something. And so if you think that she's trying to advise, you would again bring out some evidence from the text to try to prove that that's what you think her purpose is. So if you have that idea, there's something about the book that made you think that. What made you think that, right? Like, just like if you said, hey, I have a friend who's really honest, or I have a friend who's really dishonest, you would have some reason for thinking one thing or the other about your friend. So you need to bring evidence in to support those interpretations that you have. Okay. I'm not expecting everybody to have the same interpretation. All right, so what I was planning to do today was to put people in breakout rooms, which of course nobody's here, so you're all in your own breakout rooms already. But we were gonna look at creating those CEC sandwiches that we talked about in level 1. We're still working on those, right? So I introduced them in level 1, but I'm not expecting that you're suddenly a claim evidence commentary guru and expert yet. It's something that we need to practice. And so I wanted us to practice it with logos, ethos, and pathos, and I have an example of Kairos. So I'm going to try to exit the presentation right now. Okay, there we go. And go over to the Google Doc collaboration that I set up. And so we had, oh, that's funny, somebody took the first part of our thing out. Okay, all right, not sure what happened. All righty, well, anyhow, that's what happens when you give everybody editing power. Okay, all right. So I'm gonna try to move this up a little bit so we can see it better. Okay, and I'll make it a little bigger too. So what I want you to think about is, as you're creating your rough draft for essay 2, you're gonna do your pre-writing first, so you can think about what you wanna say in the essay overall. But what I was going to point out is that you wanna think about the example of Kairos that I have here, that you're going to want to do this in every body paragraph where you have that claim, evidence, commentary. So what I did is I created a model topic sentence for Kairos because I think that's probably the idea that people have the hardest time with. I'm going to go ahead and put it all on one page just so it's a little easier to, a little easier to see. Okay, so the model topic sentence is, while the topic of a grit may seem to apply to any time and place, Duckworth does shape her argument with an awareness of the time and place of her audience. This strategy is known as Kairos. Now, one thing that I might do in a body paragraph is I might follow with a definition or explanation. Okay, so I would want to, I'm not going to have just one claim, evidence, commentary sandwich in here. I'm going to define Kairos using one of our sources, right? And so that would be the videos would be one source, right? And the other source of it would be the handout, right? And so I could use one to two of our sources, right? I could use a video because I have the video lecture on Kairos, or I could use the handout, or both, right? But just to explain what Kairos is to my reader, not assuming that they already know what it means, because some may, but probably most people won't. Then I want to try to prove that she does use Kairos, right? Because now that I've explained Kairos, I need to show that she uses it. So my claim here is one way she does this is by bringing up a wide variety of contemporary successful people her audience will be familiar with. Okay, right? You know, I'm trying to be aware, if she's aware of the time and place of her audience and she's using contemporary examples that her audience knows, then that would be a proof that she's kind of paying attention to the time and place that she's writing. And so then as an example, I'm not quoting, but I am summarizing or paraphrasing here. And so I said in chapter 6, she discusses the story of the Amazon founder, Jeff Bezos, to illustrate how interest must be discovered and nurtured. That is textual evidence, even though I'm not quoting here. We don't always have to quote. Because I'm summarizing, it's not one specific page. I could do the page, I could include the page numbers where she talks about this. I did include the chapter because she kind of talks about Jeff Bezos throughout the chapter, right? And then in the commentary I wrote, while she does introduce her readers to many people they might not have heard before, readers are sure to be familiar with Amazon, which has reshaped the retail market globally, and many will know Jeff Bezos by name. By choosing a contemporary example of unparalleled success, she reveals her awareness of her audience's time and place. Her readers, in turn, will be more likely to accept her argument because they can relate to her illustrations. So I still don't think that the paragraph would be done, but that's a clear claim, evidence, commentary sandwich. And you'll notice that my commentary here is actually longer than the evidence, because what I'm trying to do is prove what the evidence means. Why do I think this proves that she is using Kairos? The other thing I want to point out for essay 2 is rhetorical appeals are all about an appeal to an audience. So what you want to do in the commentary is keep connecting to the effect on the reader, right? How will this affect the reader? If she's talking about Jeff Bezos, what is the effect on the reader? That's where a lot of your commentary is going to take place. And commentary is tricky because it's going to be different in every case. It's going to depend on your argument. It's going to depend on the assignment. It's going to depend on the evidence that you're including. So there's no one kind of commentary that goes out there. It has to be logical for what you're trying to argue. But you're trying to connect the dots for your readers. Just like if you were a lawyer, you know, and you're defending your client, you're not going to just put evidence out to the jury. You're going to explain what you think the evidence means. You're going to explain why you think the evidence is important, how it connects to the overall argument, like my client is not guilty, right? And so you want to keep connecting that. And then I wanted to point out that I don't think my paragraph would be done, right? So that one claim evidence commentary is not my whole paragraph. This is how you develop paragraphs that are longer and stronger. And I'm going to keep saying that. It's not just about length. It's about adding length that also strengthens your argument, strengthens your evidence, strengthens your ability to persuade your reader. So I want to define, that would be part of my paragraph. I would want to give textual evidence, that would be another part. But I said earlier that she uses a wide variety. Well, I only included one example, so I haven't really proven my point yet. So I would need to maybe give some additional examples. Like, you know, like in addition to Jeff Bezos, she also talks about Julia Childs. She also talks about, you know, this basketball team or this baseball team, or, you know, and you know, how she uses people from, you know, she talks about chefs that we would know. And so you would want to pull out the kind of the variety of people who have name recognition that she uses in her examples. And so that, and one of the things I might add in commentary about this is, while not everybody's a sports fan, the people, you know, somebody who's not a sports fan might recognize the chefs. The people who aren't like cooking fans might recognize Jeff Bezos. So by using different people from different walks of life who are successful in different areas, she's reaching out to a wide variety of readers, okay? But that's not the only thing I could do in the Kairos paragraph. Again, I can really strengthen this idea of Kairos by giving more than one example, right? If somebody tells, if somebody says, why do you think this? And I go, I have one reason. Okay, that's good. But if I say I have 2 reasons or I have 3 reasons, it's stronger. I have a stronger argument. It's not just longer. I'm not just adding fluff, right? I'm showing more than one reason why I think what I think. And so the other thing I might talk about, and I think I used this in the presentation on Kairos, is she talks about current issues like the epidemic levels of indifference toward work found in a 2014 Gallup poll. So she's using recent data, not just older. She does use older data as well, but she also uses recent data to say, look, this is a problem that we in America are facing right now, is epidemic levels of indifference toward work. People who just don't connect to what they're doing for a job. And so she's trying to show that this is something that's happening right now. Now, I don't think Kairos is necessarily her biggest strength in the book. I think my personal thought is logos and ethos are probably her bigger strengths. And then pathos, she's got it there, but it might not be as strong as some of the others. That's my own opinion. And I would love it if you guys push back and have and argue something else. Just back it up with evidence, okay? So you would do the same thing with logos, ethos, Kairos. For instance, for logos, a model paragraph might be, a model topic sentence might be, one strategy that Duckworth relies on heavily is logos, otherwise known as the logical appeal. Okay, and so you would want to have supporting claims for that and commentary. And one thing I talked about, and I had a short video, under 10 minutes, I think it's about 7 minutes, where I was explaining, hey, you can break this down. Logos could be 2 paragraphs, because if you remember from the lecture that I did on logos, in the video I made on logos, I said, hey, logos can be, I'm using logic, I'm using reasoning, I'm thinking through, I'm showing my thought process, A equals B and B equals C, therefore A equals C. Okay, like I'm showing you my thought process. But it can also be a strong use of hard evidence, of data. And she does bring in a lot of data. And so that could be a separate paragraph that you talk about in the section on logos. It doesn't have to be 1 paragraph on logos. Similarly, if you look on ethos, this could be 1 paragraph, but it could also be 2 paragraphs, because you could be talking about ethos in terms of her authority, right? That she works at an Ivy League university. She's a professor of psychology. She has a doctorate in neurobiology, and so you can look at all that. She's been a consultant for the White House. She's been a consultant for the NBA. And so you can look at all her creds, her credentials, right? And that could be a whole paragraph just on what an impressive resume she has and why we're more willing to listen to her as readers. Because remember, your commentary is always going to look at what is the effect on the reader. We are more likely to accept what she says and agree with her just because of her credentials, just because of the institutions that she's associated with. They're impressive. And it doesn't mean that we have to agree with her, that we have to believe her, but we are already kind of inclined to believe her because of that. The other part of trustworthiness is not just what your credentials are, but how you come off in terms of your character, right? Do you seem honest? Do you seem fair? Do you seem humble or arrogant, right? Because she could come off as really like out of touch with people because she's got all these credentials, right? That could actually sometimes backfire where they're like, oh, she just thinks she's better than us, right? But she does a lot of things where she starts off the whole book with saying, hey, my dad used to tell me you're no genius, right? And I think that's a really good example of, and I included that in the pathos example, but it's also an example of ethos, because we're more likely to listen to somebody if we think that they respect us, that they don't think they're better than us. That kind of makes us want to listen to them, because like, oh, and she talks about how she used to think that people found their passion in one cinematic moment. And so when she started her research, she thought one thing, and then when she did her research, she realized she was wrong. that's an example of humility. And when she has that humility and that honesty, it also makes us more inclined to believe her, because if she's humble about what she's wrong, what she's wrong about, then we're going to be, oh, okay, all right, I think I can trust her. So you would think about, you know, what you might have a paragraph on character and another paragraph on credentials, or you might start off with credentials and then talk about character, right? So it could be 2 different paragraphs on ethos, you know, where you develop each idea separately. Pathos could be, you know, it can be sadness, it could be excitement, it could be humor, it could be pain, right? And so obviously she does not use pathos the same way that Victor Rios uses pathos in Street Life. He has a powerful use of pathos, right? But Angela Duckworth is a little less so. She's a little bit more, she's not quite so her book is not quite so emotional, but that doesn't mean that there's no use of pathos, right? So I want to encourage you to think about that. I have seen students write just 1 paragraph on pathos, but I've also had people say like where she uses pathos well, where she doesn't use pathos as well. It could be emotions that are about fear or emotions that are positive. You can think about any way you want to divide it. If you have a lot to say about pathos, you might consider dividing it into 2 paragraphs, right? And so this is partly how you're going to develop an essay that is going to be 1,200 words. I'm going to pause the recording. I want to see if I can find the outline because it seems to have gotten deleted. Okay, all right, I figured out what happened. I think somebody accidentally deleted some of it, but I was able to go into the version history and retrieve what we did on Wednesday. So if you're using a collaboration and you want to copy and paste things, just make sure you don't delete it so that other people can see. So I had the stuff that we did from the breakout rooms on Wednesday, and we still have my model and then the sort of things, but but I wanted to also include the model outline on here just in case you're looking for it. So just a reminder that in your intro, you might want to have a hook, bridge, and thesis, then talk about what she's claiming, then talk about who and why, and then you're going to see that the majority of the essay is going to be how she argues. In terms of doing a hook, bridge, and thesis for this essay, there's a lot of different ways you can do it, and you can be creative. I think in one of the examples, I talked about how to dress an argument, I think was the example that I did, and that was based on iGen. And so you can kind of be creative and use a metaphor. This would be just a suggestion. It doesn't have to be the way you do it. You could make the summary of Duckworth's key ideas part of your introduction, but I think because you're really going for length, it might be good just to think about the idea of what are rhetorical appeals, right? What is it about how we argue? So an example that you could use is something like, you know, the other week I was talking to my roommate and I was trying to figure out how to get my roommate to put his dishes away, right? Put his dishes in the dishwasher, something like that, or, you know, not leave his dirty dishes out all over the apartment, right? And so you can say, okay, so when I thought about how to do this best, right? And it could be a hypothetical, like imagine you have a roommate who leaves his dishes everywhere, right? And then you can say, I really had to think about, how am I going to do this? Well, one is that I want to give him reasons why he should do it, but I want to really present myself as not being angry or judgmental. So I need to think about my tone when I talk to him. And then I need to think about how to, like, maybe I'm going to use humor, you know, to try to bridge the divide between myself and my roommate. And I need to think about the timing, like, you know, this person, like, maybe talking to him right after he comes home from work isn't going to be good for this guy. You know, maybe I need to talk to him on the weekend about this. And so you could start your introduction with just the idea of arguments, right? And just the idea of how we need to shape our arguments to really be effective. And then you could bridge into it, right? That's your hook, right? And then you bridge into it by saying, in the book Grit, the Power of Passion and Perseverance by Angela Lee Duckworth, or I guess she just goes by Angela Duckworth here, by Angela Duckworth. You know, she is trying to advise young adults about how to become grittier, right? And then and that's kind of just a quick foreshadowing of the what, who, and why. And then you want to get into that essential question that we talked about, which is over here, right? And so I can say, in order to do this effectively, she uses strong logos and ethos with a sprinkling of pathos and kairos, something like that, right? And so I have in 2 sentences my essential questions answered. I haven't supported them yet. I haven't developed them. That's the point of the body, right? So then I start off with, okay, I need to explain what she's arguing. What are her main ideas? Then I need to explain why I think she's trying to advise, why I think her audience is young people. Then I'm going to talk about logos and ethos. Maybe it's 1 paragraph each, maybe it's 2 each. It depends on what you have to say, right? It's not going to be the same for each of you. Maybe I have 1 paragraph on pathos, maybe I have 2. Maybe I have 1 paragraph on kairos, maybe I have 2, probably 1 on kairos. And then I have my conclusion. And in the conclusion, I want to wrap back up by getting back into those essential questions. I want to remind my reader, what is my overall answer to those questions? And then the so what might be going back to that idea of, if you want a strong argument, if you want to get your point across to somebody, you know, this is what you should do, right? And you want to maybe evaluate a little bit, like, how effective do you think Duckworth is? Maybe Duckworth is really effective for you, or maybe Duckworth wasn't effective for you, but you think still she might be effective for other people, right? And so you can kind of get into that in the conclusion where you're evaluating her. Okay, so I hope this was helpful, and I hope that you all have a great weekend. I'm looking forward to reading your essay 2 pre-writes. I've gotten 1 or 2 in already. I know that people got really confused on the research quest, and you can still turn that in, and I would encourage you to do it before you write your rough draft. Really all I was trying to do was get you to get evidence that you would use in the body of your paper. That's the whole point of the research quest, is make sure that you have textual evidence that you can use to plug into every body paragraph, okay? So if you haven't done it, go ahead and do that, because that's a type of pre-writing too, even though it's not labeled pre-write, okay? Hope that you have a great weekend. Bye-bye.